the warming trend we've seen in the last 50 years, you were saying, has actually been good for wine. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I think if you look at most of the places growing grapes worldwide, many of them have been right at the cool limit margins, and so a little bit of warming has made them more suitable. Also, some places that have been even a little bit warmer, warmer environment really doesn't impact them quite so negatively. However, if there are places that have been at the upper end of some of those varieties, growing a given variety in its absolute warmest location and it's warmed a little bit, that's been a problem.
And what are you predicting? Summarize what you're predicting now for the next 20, 50 years.
Well, the temperature changes that are out there right now, we've already seen somewhere around a 2.5 to 3.5 degree Fahrenheit warming in the past 50 years. We're projecting somewhere in the range of about that same amount of warming. The most extreme models that we use today are showing that temperatures could be as warm as 10 degrees Fahrenheit warming in the growing season. But most of the models, when you take an average, they tend to get down to about 2.5, 3.5 degrees.
And what are the basic impacts going to be of that warming trend?
Well, I mean, there's a tremendous number of impacts across all sectors of society. If we look at agriculture, agriculture has a lot to lose because growing virtually any crop is quite tied to the climate that it can grow in. If we look at viticulture and wine production specifically, it's a unique crop because it has a full range of climate that it can grow under, but each variety even has a smaller segment of that range that it can grow under. So Cabernet Sauvignon or Pinot Noir or Chardonnay can only grow in a fairly finite climate. And if climates change the way we're projecting, then those climate zones have to change as well.
So we're going to see eventually certain parts of the grape growing world not suitable for certain varietals. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I think that this has already happened. If you look at it historically, the Greeks and then the Romans, and as people traveled throughout the world, they took varieties to try in different places. And when a given variety either didn't work because it wasn't in the right climate, they moved to something else. Or if they planted a variety and all of a sudden it became too warm, they shifted to something else. So changing varieties is not something new. It's something that has been going on. The challenge with us today is that our social and economic systems have become, we feel they're very steadfast or static in their nature. And so as we look at Burgundy being the classic home for Pinot Noir, will it always be the classic home for Pinot Noir? It's a really big question. And if it's not climatically the best place to grow Pinot Noir, then what happens when it grows Syrah or Merlot? Will the government allow that to happen? Will the culture of that region accept that and transform that? And then will the marketplace, a whole new generation of wine drinkers, will they accept a different wine style from a given region?
What worries you most about this whole thing?
For me, what worries me the most is that it's not something that people are really concerned with. As a society, humans are basic about dealing with the biggest threat. You know, if we're confronted with a problem, it's whatever is the most immediate, and that's what we're going to deal with. Climate change, unfortunately, is a very kind of long-term issue. If you don't feel it and see it immediately, you might not really care, and that's part of the problem. There's a lack of caring comes from the fact that it's not immediate. The economic crisis, job scenarios, and/or the pest or disease, and/or the influenza or whatever that might come to us, they're going to be much more immediate.
And lastly, just summarize how we're going to see wines themselves change. You did this in your talk a little bit.
Sure.
Within any specific growing area.
Well, and I think they already have. You can talk about the change to slightly higher alcohol, bigger, bolder wines that are out there. This has not just been due to climate, but it's been due to kind of I think a three-pronged set of things going on. There's the culture in how we have gone about managing or nurturing the vines. We've changed the way we have managed them in the vineyard. We changed the way the fruit comes into the winery. We changed the way we make it in the winery. But you throw in a warming climate at the same time all that's going on, and then you throw in the consumer and or wine critic drive to slightly bigger, bolder styles. Those things have happened. The real problem, I think, comes down to is that at some point, a balanced wine becomes the goal. And if it's grown in the wrong climate, it can't be balanced. Wine technologies in the winery can adjust things clearly, but there's got to be a tipping point. And what is that? And I'm not sure I fully know where that's taking us, but climate, I think, will always be the wild card that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's now, I think, a trend slightly toward lower alcohol, not as big wines as we've seen with some varieties in some areas.
So I think that that's a response to consumers, clearly, grape growers and winemakers. There's clearly a camp of people out there that really want to see those more finesse style wines.
But climate change might fight that trend a little bit.
It might fight that. I think that I think that there are some adaptation strategies that we can do in vineyards that can drop that higher alcohol, over the top, bolder wine into something that's a little bit more finesse. But it also may mean changing variety, changing location. There's a lot of adaptive strategies that are available to this industry, and it's good at it. It just needs to know how to play that so that it's the right product for the right market, I think.